What happens when the boundaries of horror are pushed to their limits? On today's show, we delve into the mind of Daniel J. Volpe, the author behind Slaughterhouse Moan, a novel that redefines depravity and redemption. In this episode, Daniel shares his creative journey, the inspirations behind his chilling narratives, and the personal experiences that inform his unique storytelling. Get ready for a conversation that explores the darkest corners of fiction and the human psyche. If you enjoy the show, consider supporting it by subscribing to my Patreon for exclusive daily blog posts and weekly book and film reviews. Head over to patreon.com/The Dark Mind Podcast and become a citizen of the darkness. You can also support the show for free by subscribing to my YouTube channel. Your support helps keep the dark conversation alive. So without further ado, I give you Daniel J. Volpe. Daniel, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Vincent. Thanks for having me back.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining me on this 14th day of September 2025. I was really excited to see the announcement for Slaughterhouse Moan, especially when you called it your, quote, most depraved, violent, and sexual work to date.
Yeah, that was pretty accurate. It's a gross one.
Definitely. It opened with Texas Chainsaw vibes, slipped into isolated hillbilly pervert territory, and layered in with auditory horror of the slaughterhouse and a twisted mix of deviant sex and violence, all perfectly timed for maximum effect. The complex dynamic of a young deformed girl and her mother, both victims and victimizers, added a gut-wrenching emotional intensity. The terror felt real and earned, so thank you for joining me on the show to discuss this savage work.
I appreciate it. Thank you for the kind words, and I'm happy to be here.
Absolutely. Get this mic adjusted here. So a brief synopsis followed by my signature long-winded first question. The book follows Beulah Winslow, known as the Princess of Pork, who descends into depravity to save her failing pig farm while grappling with guilt over her physically deformed daughter. Davy, also driven by desperation, uses sex to survive, though unlike Beulah, he isn't abused or extorted. Because he's out on parole, Davy takes a job as a farmhand at the Winslow estate, only to find that its horrors well surpass those of prison. Meanwhile, high school seniors JD, Ari, Rich, and Danielle are stranded in rural Virginia after car trouble derails their beach trip. Isolated in a hunting cabin with dwindling supplies, they soon discover that escaping the slaughterhouse's shadow is only the beginning of their nightmare, and that is where the story begins. So, Slaughterhouse Moan started as a short story years ago. What compelled you to revisit the story and expand it to novel length? And how did you decide what to keep, change, or deepen in the transition?
So years ago, this story started out as a short story called My Beauties, and it was about a deranged pig farmer who had prize pigs, and the character of Davy was there. There was no deformed child, but his daughter's name was Hattie, the pig farmer. And essentially he was creating these pig creatures. He ends up making his wife and daughter into these monsters. And it was actually one of my longer short stories, I guess you'd say. It was probably about 15,000 words. Um, and I loved that idea. Like I love like the kind of like grindhouse feel, like you said, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, like that feel, that grittiness. And that story was so much fun to write. And I was like, man, I really wanted to clean it up and put it back out, because I had a bunch of old stories that are just, from back in the day that just really suck. That being one of them. So I was like, I want to put a fresh coat of paint on it. But then the more I thought about it, I was like, man, I could make this so much better if I really expand on it. And it was something that just kept nagging at me. And I'm like, all right, I want to start it. So I started it and put it to the side. This project actually took me the longest out of anything I've written. And this probably was close to 2 years in the making, if not longer, because I would start it and then I'd come up with another project, or I'd have a deadline for something else. And I didn't really have a full story, I guess you'd say, with an ending. So I just kept putting it aside. And then once I started it, I really loved it. But like I said, things just got in the way. So last year I did a writing retreat up in the Poconos with a bunch of other great authors. And I really settled down and started going hard on it. And the more I wrote, I was like, man, this has got a lot of meat to it. And, finding the character of Beulah, knowing that she's going to have this wild backstory, it just kept growing and growing and growing. And, it finished up. I think my first draft was like 86,000 words, and then trimmed down to the final product. It was probably about 81,000 words, which, put into perspective, my second longest book is Left to You, and that's only 73,000 words. So a lot of fun to do this one.
Yeah, that writing retreat you're talking about, if it's the one that I think that I saw on social media, that was you, Aaron, Wrath, James White, Judith Sonnet.
Yeah.
Am I missing somebody?
Oh, yeah, a couple people. Chris was there. Chris Triana.
Triana, okay.
Lucas Mangum was there, and Shane McKenzie.
Wow.
So we had a huge, massive house out in the Poconos. We rented for probably about 4 days. And, I got a lot of work done, and it was great to do that retreat, because some of the areas I was stuck on, at the end of the night when everybody's computers are kind of away, you can, bounce ideas off of people and see if something's working or something's missing. So I'm doing another retreat with Aaron actually in November, because they're so fruitful for me that I love doing them.
Man, that particular group of people bouncing ideas, it's like throwing gasoline on a fire. Jesus.
Yeah. The bathtub scene, I wrote that while I was at that retreat, and I remember telling Aaron and Shane about that scene, and they're like, that might ruffle some feathers. And I was like, well, that's what we're here for.
Interesting. Yeah, and the way you were talking about kind of the whole grindhouse aesthetic feel / vibe made me think of your cover. Like you and Aaron, you guys have these really stylistic covers, and this one is no slouch. I mean, it's like, how would you describe that? It's not photorealistic. It is it's got some depth of like animation in it, but it is kind of photorealistic. I don't know. Whoever your graphic designer is just transcendent.
So that's not a computer rendered image. That's all hand drawn.
Oh, wow.
By Nick Justice. And then the coloring on that was actually done by Len Danovich, who's a comic book artist as well. And Nick Justice, I cannot speak highly enough about that guy. He is an amazing artist. Not only is he an amazing artist, but he is professional and he works quickly. That's all 100% hand drawn, every piece of it. And he showed me sketches along the way just to make sure we had it down right. We talked about the color scheme, and he told me that he wanted to do it in like a Justin Coons kind of feel. And for those of you that don't know Justin, he did all of the covers for Death's Head Press, their splatter westerns. So that kind of collage almost feel to it where there's different parts of the story that are interwoven into the cover. Nick really captured that. And I couldn't be happier with the cover. And it's got a little hidden nipple in there for those of you that see the cover. Just
What?
barely see it. Yep.
Where's the nipple?
Look at the edge of the house, the right side of the house. That's a nipple poking out.
Right.
And the silhouette of the woman.
Okay.
Follow her breast line down.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Is it by the E? No.
No. Follow the silhouette of the woman. Like the background is a woman. Obviously.
Oh, okay. I see.
Yeah, where the slaughterhouse is, that top right corner of the slaughterhouse is actually a nipple poking. It's just
I see it. I see it. I got it.
Yeah,
okay. Yeah. Okay.
So,
Interesting.
yeah, a little hidden nip in there for everybody.
Nip slip for it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, circling back to the story, was it your intention for Slaughterhouse Moan to be your longest and most depraved, violent, and sexual book? Did you have like, I'm really going to fuck some shit up with this one?
Once I kind of had the idea for Beulah in my head, I was like, I want to really explore her character. And then knowing where the story started with the short story, I knew that story was already violent as it was. So with this one, I was like, I'm going to make this even more depraved and more violent. And I just got off the tail end of writing Runts, and that obviously has the teenagers as well. But there wasn't as much sex in that one. So I was like, I want something I want to read. I just want something graphic. And I remember, I was those teenagers years ago going on road trips with my friends and my girlfriend, and we didn't drive as far as Virginia, but we'd always take trips to the Jersey Shore because we live in New York. And luckily we didn't get stranded, but some of the precarious encounters the kids found themselves in, it was not unlike what myself and my girlfriend find ourselves in, in dumpy seaside hotels. So it was a lot of fun to do.
Yeah. Oh, what was the name of we used to stay in? What are those? I want to say, I guess I don't want to disparage a particular chain, but there's a number in the title.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about.
There's only two of them.
You could find some nice ones that, that weren't bad, but then you could find some ones where there was probably some bed bug decontamination needed.
Well, if you were on a budget, and hey, whatever.
Yeah. Well, the Winslow farm is described as a dying slice of Americana. What do you want this setting to evoke in readers beyond just a backdrop for horror? And how do you see the farm reflecting the anxieties of rural America?
So where I live, even though I live in New York, many people think New York is just New York City. New York State is massive. It is a very large farming state, which most people don't think that. It's called the Big Apple for a reason. There's tons of apple farms, dairy farms. One of my friends, her family owns probably 3 or 4 generation owned dairy farm. And just seeing the struggles they go through and seeing my friend's father, who's probably well into his 70s, still working day in, day out. And, these people are the backbone of America and really the world because of the amount of agriculture the United States puts out. So I wanted to show almost, yes, I wanted to have a cool backdrop, obviously, but just the despair and the struggle that people have to go through to maintain their livelihood and to, upkeep these farms. I hope nobody's stooping as low as Beulah, but I wouldn't be surprised if people were finding alternate means of revenue to keep their farm and their family afloat.
I don't understand why the economy makes it so hard for the people that produce food. You think you'd want to help them out.
Yeah. Yeah. Even my mother-in-law and my father-in-law, they have, they don't really use it anymore, but they have an apple orchard that they own. And my father-in-law used to have like an apple business, for lack of better terms, growing apples. And, just seeing, hearing stories from my wife about how hard it was as a kid and him having to be up with the sun and go to bed, as early as he could to be up the next day. It's rough for people that work that life.
Well, there is a monster in the book, and I don't want to spoil anything, so I'll just say monster, that is central to the novel. So, can you talk about how you approach writing monsters if that won't cause any spoilers? Do you see them when you produce them? Are you thinking metaphor, cosmic terror, something like that, something else?
So obviously, there's always going to be some kind of metaphor, in most fiction. I would say, especially when it comes to monsters, like what are they running from? Is this their past coming back to get them? Is it something they're being punished for? And my monster in this is kind of a little bit of everything. Obviously, it's a real physical monster in the book, but it could be representative of the sins of everyone involved and getting their, we'll say, just desserts. But then there are other characters that are, for the most part, wholly innocent that still have negative run-ins with the monster. So I can't really say necessarily that it's all justice. With this monster, it was very similar to the one that I had in the short story, and just with some tweaks. But I wanted this like absolutely crazy beast with a little bit of I'm not going to say a heart, but a little bit of humanity to it. So I just kind of went balls to the wall with it. And I have to take notes sometimes on my monsters because I don't want to forget what they look like. Characters is kind of easy. If I confuse brown hair or black hair, maybe that might throw somebody off. But if a monster has, horns and tusks, and then next scene it has, a unicorn horn and hands and not hoofs, and, it could throw them off. So, I'm not a good artist, so I would just take notes on what it looked like, what its abilities were. And I write a lot of fantasy as well. I'm writing more of that now. But, so I always have to try to keep track of my beasts.
Yeah. So no visual mock-up for the monster, just.
No, just notes, just so I can make sure that, and some of it I even did screw up that my editor caught. And she's like, "Oh, in this scene you have him with this, and this scene you have this." I'm like, "Oh shit, I got to go back and change that." So,
okay,
yeah, I can't draw. My drawing would be a monstrosity if I tried to. So,
yeah. Well, you mentioned fantasy.
oh yeah, I have a fantasy trilogy that actually is it's been out for a couple of years. I think I was just screwing with them earlier because I have another project coming. Yeah, I wrote a little fantasy trilogy. A couple of years ago. I love fantasy. A lot of these books behind me are like you could see most of these over here. Where's my hand? Like all these are all sci-fi fantasy, and then it expands. But yeah, I love it. I've been working on some new stuff, fantasy sci-fi stuff coming up, hopefully in the near future. But
do you insert some darkness into that, or are you kind of sticking to the genre when it comes to fantasy? And
oh no, these are actually, if you see on the bottom, it says splatter fantasy.
Oh shit! Okay, I got you.
So like I said, I love fantasy. So I love Joe Abercrombie. He's probably one of my favorite authors, not just in fantasy but in general. And his stuff is absolutely brutal. So I like that more realistic feel to fantasy. I don't mind like the old school high fantasy, but like I love the realistic feeling to it, like Song of Ice and Fire kind of stuff, where low magic, high violence. That's kind of what I like.
Oh, awesome. Well, piggybacking right off that to the next question, graphic sex and violence are hallmarks of your work. So, what do you think these elements offer narratively and emotionally that could not be achieved otherwise?
Reality. People have sex. People die. People are murdered. It's a shame, but it's reality. And when that stuff happens, it's graphic. Sex is graphic. Violence is graphic. And I think that adding that stuff in such detail, it lends some reality to the stories that people can relate to. Maybe not the violence and murder, but definitely the graphic sex and stuff like that. And I try not to be unrealistic, I guess you'd say, with some of it. Maybe some of the kills are kind of out there, but like, especially with the sex and stuff like that, I want it to feel like this could actually happen and that these situations are real. And the readers seem to gravitate toward it. I don't know if they're just perverts like I am, or they just like the reality of it. But I think it adds another layer to the character to show their vulnerability in those romantic situations, and then to show the fear that they exhibit when they're being slaughtered.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, the sex in your work is realistic. It's not like you know, they locked eyes and then had sex for 4 hours straight, you know.
Yeah,
So yeah,
yeah, that'd be too
yeah,
long.
yeah.
3 hours tops.
3 hours tops, and then I'm exhausted. No.
Yeah, yeah.
Has nothing to do with editing or being
No,
shot over multiple days. No,
no.
not at all. Well, extreme horror often polarizes readers. How do you decide when something is too much or not enough? And do you have personal boundaries, or do you kind of trust the story's needs? And I guess kind of the specific thing, it seems like, I'm sure there are people that are just like, oh, I can't take the violence, but, so they probably shouldn't read splatterpunk. But then there are some people that I know that are splatterpunk fans as far as gore and gross. But when it comes to like sexual assault, they're,
For me, it's. I've always said this. It's story over substance. So if I have to shoehorn something in there to make it gross or violent or anything like that, the readers can tell. And I've read plenty of horror, especially in our genre, where I'm like, this doesn't really fit. You're just throwing this in there just to be gross. And it just doesn't fit. It does nothing for the story. It does nothing for the character. I have like one of my most popular books is Left to You, and there's zero sex in that. And because it wasn't right for the story, if I had thrown graphic sex scenes in there, it would have felt awkward. It just doesn't fit. And something like this book with Slaughterhouse Moan, that stuff, I believe, at least works because you have, some horny teenagers. You have this scumbag guy, Davey, who is just a fucking dirtbag womanizer and has gotten.
He's kind of funny though.
Oh, he's hilarious. And he's just an absolute, like, the
Scumbag.
Worst of the worst. He's a scumbag. But I wanted people to feel that, but I wanted them to feel something for him. So yes, there's a time and a place for everything. And even with the violence, there's a time and a place, and I want to see the bad guys get what they deserve. And as for me, I just had a signing with Aaron in New Hampshire not long ago, and they asked about this, like, how far are you willing to go? And for me, I try not to show any graphic sexual assault towards children, and even the graphic sexual assault towards anybody, I generally will either tone that down or make it implied. But with children, it's always like off screen if there's going to be a rape or anything like that, or a sexual assault. And I try to do that because I have kids. I have 2 daughters, and like, that's not, to me, it's not necessary. Some people like it and they want it in their stories and they want to write it, and that's fine by them. But for me, that's where I kind of draw the line. I do kill dogs, and that's what I tell people.
Yeah, some people, that's their
trigger.
Like, you can kill humans all day long, but don't you touch animals.
Yeah. I tell people that. I'm like, oh, my story is the dog dies. I was like, if you see a dog, he's probably going to fucking die. And I have 2 dogs, and I love dogs, but I have no qualms about that.
Yeah. So would you, if somebody asked, would you consider yourself extreme horror versus splatterpunk? Or is there a...
To me, there is a difference, and I think each of my books is different in that subgenre. Something like Plastic Monsters, I would consider splatterpunk because it has a societal message to it about, beauty and the pressures put on young women. And something like Slaughterhouse Moan, I guess that could kind of blend either or, because it does have some very extreme moments, but then there is that splatterpunky kind of feel where there is these societal things that Beulah is faced with that she's forced into, I guess I should say, that she has to perform to maintain, I guess, her persona and to try to survive. So I would say they can go either way. Something like Runts is extreme horror. Like there's really no message in Runts besides, really, I wanted to write a story about mutants that fucking ate people and had weird abilities. And that's just extreme and fun. And, you're not really going to take much away from that in a societal manner, but you'll just have fun reading it. It's just cool and mutants and shit.
Awesome. Well, let's see here. The teens stranded in the novel are quintessential fish out of water. How do you use their perspective to challenge or unsettle horror tropes about rural outsiders?
So the teens, I did loosely base some of them on, myself and my friends and stuff. And at that age, they're all seniors. So 18 years old, we'll just call them that just for sex purposes, I guess. At that age, you think you're an adult and you think you're so grown up and you're really not. And then you realize like these kids they're stuck and they're in a bad way. And they realize that they're not as adult as they think themselves to be. And I'm almost 40. I'll be 40 next month and I still don't feel like an adult. So I can imagine, myself at 18 and how it would feel to be stranded like that. And for them to have to kind of go into the unknown and deal, like you said, the rural outsiders, it's something they're learning about life and how they're trying to perceive what is going on and how they're going to work their way through it. And obviously you read the book and, they do their best.
They do their best.
Yeah.
Indeed. Well, I guess more in the storyline of Beulah rather than the kids, Davy as well. I guess you could say the farmhands as well. The sense of being trapped by poverty, place, or family pervades the story. Your characters yearn for escape, so I was curious to know, do you sympathize and or empathize with their choices? I'm not saying you're rich now, but like you live a comfortable life, I'm assuming.
Mm-hmm.
Was there a point where you were kind of just in this economic insecure position that it took you a while to get out of, or?
For me, no. I've always, like I say, I've been well off, but my kids have never gone to bed hungry. So I've done well for myself. But as a kid, we were on the other side of that spectrum. My dad worked very hard to provide there were 4 kids and, obviously my parents. So my dad worked very hard to provide for us. My mother was a stay-at-home mom for pretty much my entire life. So I did see that and seeing the things that we could and couldn't do because of money. And maybe you didn't realize it as much as a kid, but now as an adult looking back and seeing, the struggles they went through and, how hard they tried to provide for us and just the little things that they could do to make our lives better. Obviously it resonates and my parents are very well off now. They're retired. But yeah, I could definitely sympathize with that. And one of the things about this story is, like you said, everybody's kind of trapped there, but the teens were kind of the escapees. Like they went there and they had the freedom to travel and to not going to say they were well off, but they had that ability and they put themselves there. Whereas the others were kind of stuck there. And the cyclicalness of not only the abuse, but like you said, the poverty, and none of them on that farm they weren't really going to escape. And even the farmhand said like, oh, I'll just leave here and go to another farm. Like you're not breaking the cycle. You're just continuing to do the same thing over and over again. And yeah, I definitely sympathize with them for that. And, it was interesting to write that and to try to make that feel claustrophobic. Like even though it was a wide open space, but they really had no chance of escape.
Actually, I guess I shouldn't assume. Are you rich?
No, I wish. I do live in New York, but
because I sell timeshare. No, I'm just like. Well, along with the economic insecurity, isolation is a recurring theme in your work. What psychological or philosophical truths can be revealed by characters stripped of their social safety nets?
Oh, everything. It goes back to my book Only Psychos, where they were stranded in a hotel during a snowstorm, and you start to see people devolve, and just like we've seen it, time and time again in the real world, where there's a natural disaster or some kind of catastrophe, and people start to devolve when they don't have the societal boundaries that they're used to. And I feel like that is something that works well with horror. Uh, what was it called? Under the Dome by Stephen King. That was another one. It was a whole town. And The Darkness on the Edge of Town by Brian Keene is another great example of that, where you have a whole town, and even though it's this massive town, it still feels claustrophobic and isolated because you can't leave. And what is it? I think it's A Bronx Tale, when the scene in the bar with the bikers where they're breaking up the thing, and Sonny's like, well, now you can't leave. It's kind of one of those things. You see like the look on their faces just kind of just drain out of them. And that feeling of not being able to leave somewhere, you're like, oh shit, now what do I do?
Yeah, it was, I forget his name, as a comedian. He has a podcast, and he was talking about how horror is not horror unless it is inescapable. He's like, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, they're in the middle of nowhere. The Exorcist, you got a demon-possessed child out there. Well, that's your child. You can't just leave them, He's like, the worst horror is the stuff where you're just watching it going, fucking leave, dude.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely true. And it's spot on, because how many times have we seen movies like that, read a book, where you're like, you could just get out of this. And, I just read a Richard Lehman book. I think it was called, Come Out Tonight by Richard Lehman. And it has that inescapable feeling where you're just the whole time, you're like, oh God, if you just did this, you could get out of here. But the character doesn't. You're like, if you just did this, you could survive. And the character doesn't. You're like, God damn, just do one little thing right.
Uh-huh.
It is a great book.
Yeah. I'll have to check that one out. And I guess kind of reverting back to when you were talking about what they revert to when the safety net is gone. I'm not big on zombie movies. I don't know why. What was the name of that series? Walking Dead?
Yeah, Walking Dead. Yep.
Yeah, I'm just not into it. But I do like the aspect of, the world is over. You've got these, the undead, or not the undead, but these, whatever zombies are considered, wandering around trying to eat you. And you really get to see like whose lizard brain takes over. They have this overcorrection response of self-preservation to where they're like, screw everybody else. I do like that aspect of zombie movies.
Yeah, that's and unfortunately we do see that in reality. And up here in New York, we had I forget what year it was. There's like a gas shortage, and it was like chaos. And it wasn't that like there was no gas, it was just a shortage, and people were getting killed over it. And it was wild. And like you see, humanity is restrained only for 3 days worth of food. Once it goes beyond that, then you see the true colors of people and the true nature. And, as a father and a husband, I understand that, how far would you be willing to go for your family and to make sure that they're provided for? And, it's something that we've seen in reality and obviously in fiction as well.
Well, Beulah and Hattie Winslow are an unsettling mother-daughter team. How do you create empathy for characters who are both perpetrators and victims of extreme circumstances? Why do you think readers connect with dark, complicated parental relationships?
I think for a lot of people, it's an unfortunate reality of their own lives. I can say this, and not to obviously put anybody down, but I was very lucky. I had two loving parents that took care of us. They didn't fight. They didn't drink. They didn't have any kind of vices that I knew of. They're still together today, but I know a lot of people aren't that lucky to have that in their lives. So I wanted them to feel real. And I watched it with Aaron, Unknown Caller on Netflix, that documentary about that woman who was catfishing her own daughter. And spoiler, I'm sorry for fuck that up. But in the end, you see like this girl, and she just almost kind of forgives her mother, and like you're like, how could you forgive her for something that she did to you over these years? And
what was it, like a Munchausen by proxy thing?
I, well, there was no, I guess maybe like a psychological way. She was just essentially texting her, but horrific things from unknown numbers. And it was just really like disturbing, but it was more disturbing how the girl reacted.
But because my wife, I think, watched this, wasn't she doing it to keep her daughter dependent on her?
Yeah, she was doing it to keep her daughter, like to give her a shoulder to cry on and to try to help her and stuff like that. So yeah, I guess it could be a Munchausen's by
Oh no,
proxy.
so it's more like codependency.
Yeah,
She needed her to need her.
yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So it was horrific, and I don't think anybody felt for the mother, but I do understand the child and the fact that she's like, well, this is still my mother. Like, I don't know what to do. So I wanted to kind of build, and this is obviously I wrote this book way before this came out, but I wanted to build that relationship where, you know, I'm not going to say a love hate, but just that spite that Beulah felt for Hattie, like for, you know, even she said like ruining her life and her body and her chances at stardom, but she still kind of had that love for her, and it just developed into a severely abusive relationship.
Yeah. Well, kind of piggybacking off that, there's a recurring tension about what knowledge and experiences are, quote, safe for daughters and how mothers weigh shielding versus preparing them. How did you build these nuanced maternal relationships? You said you do have two daughters?
I do, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, it's kind of one of those things where I look at the interactions between not only my kids and my wife, but like, you know, other girls that I've known growing up, and, you know, just reading a lot and watching documentaries and seeing how some mothers will sometimes they live through their kids. We have people that we know, that a woman I grew up with who was not well off and, you know, grew up in not the greatest of families. And now her kids, for lack of a better term, are spoiled. You know, these are the kids in school that are poking fun at other kids for clothes or this or that. And, you know, is that a product of parenting and something that her parents have pushed upon her, or something that her mother is like, you know, I never had this stuff and now you have it, but not showing her the gratitude for it. We also have another family that are very, very well off. I think both parents have Lamborghinis. Not my kids. I don't. I drive a Hyundai. And they're the nicest kids ever. They're being raised to be respectful and not be flashy and show off their wealth and not put people down, whereas other people are not like that. And I feel like that is obviously could be a parenting flaw, some of these issues. And like you said, having those mothers shield their kids as opposed to giving them life experiences or kind of teaching them, you know, is really what it comes down to, is how do you prepare them for adulthood? And we always try to teach our children, you know, respect and gratitude for the things they have. And my wife and I didn't grow up well off, and our kids are better off than we were at their age. So we want to try to teach them like, hey, you know, appreciate what you have and be respectful and just, you know, enjoy the life you have. Cause for some people it's not as easy.
Yeah. Well, Davy's story explores redemption and survival in extreme conditions. Do you believe in redemption as a universal possibility, or do you think that your fiction challenges that idea?
I do believe in redemption for most people. I think some people are irredeemable, that they just can't, you know, things they've done, there's no saving them. I don't think Davy was so far gone as a character that he couldn't be saved, which is kind of why his story arc took the turn it did. And I thought that was important to show that even though he was a scumbag, there were some redeemable characteristics to him, and just for people to maybe relate that just because things aren't the greatest in your life, or maybe you've made some poor choices, there can be redemption for you, but maybe not for everybody, but in certain situations, I think that yes, you can be redeemed.
Well, you've talked about planting seeds in your stories that later have major payoffs. I don't know if it'll induce a major spoiler or not, but can you share a Chekhov's gun from Slaughterhouse Moan that you are particularly proud of in your process for placing and firing it?
Yeah, without spoiling it, it might be
Tricky.
difficult. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some things in there where I'm like, all right, I'm going to try to bring this back later on, and so much so that like I like to. I guess I kind of do it more with characterization, where I want these characters to almost build towards the end and to have them, show some of their flaws and their strengths, and then use those, I guess, later on, as opposed to like a particular item or a piece of scenery or something like that. But yeah, there's definitely, and I always throw Easter eggs and stuff in there too. So
Gotcha. Well, you mark sections with years, anchoring the narrative in specific moments. What do these time periods represent both for you and for the trajectory of the characters? And how many was it exactly? For some reason, I feel like I remember, was it 2003? Was one of them?
2003 is the main narrative. Yes.
Uh huh. And what
So,
was,
well, Beulah had a bunch. She bounces around to the 80s and 90s up until the present day in the book, which is 2003.
okay.
For me, 2003 is the year I graduated high school. So it was easy for me to kind of flash back to those years and thinking about, the cars we had, the music we listened to, the things we said, the stuff we ate, the clothes we wore. Um, it made it easier because cell phones weren't a very big thing. They were
I
just
was just
starting.
about to say that.
Yeah, they were just kind of, I got my first cell phone. Probably I went to college, just like a community college in like 2004. My dad had like some old piece of shit cell phone. He's like, just take this when you're driving to school. It was like a half hour away. He's like, just take this and don't use it unless you crash or something like that. So I'm like, all right. Uh, Writing in those periods make it easier because a lot of things in horror can be solved with a cell phone. In some cases where you have to call for help or you have to record something or you need a flashlight, like they're the Swiss Army knife. The other stuff bouncing around into like the 80s and 90s was just to kind of stretch my legs a little bit with trying to explore different time periods and to kind of show Beulah's progression throughout the years and show her essentially her descent and her rise again.
Well, how do you want readers to feel when they finish Slaughterhouse Moan? Is there a particular emotional or existential note you hope lingers with them?
Honestly, I think everybody's interpretation is always going to be different, but at the end of it, I just want you to enjoy it, just to help you escape the realities of today's world, just to give you a reprieve for 300 and something pages you know, to just kind of forget about all the bullshit and just to enjoy yourself in fiction, suspend belief for a little bit, believe this monster exists and have fun with it. Some people might take a deeper meaning on it, seeing, like we talked about, the decline of rural society, the parental abuse, sexual abuse, and stuff along those lines. Even drug abuse plays a role in this book. But at the end of the day, like I've said before, I'm an entertainer. I just want you to be entertained. If you read the book and it upsets you, that my goal was not accomplished, mission not accomplished. I just want you to have fun. So everybody takes something away from it. And at the end, regardless of what you thought, I just want you to not even so much enjoy. I like if you enjoy it, but I just want you to have fun.
And take comfort in the fact that your life is not as bad as Beulah's.
No, no.
And if it
Definitely.
is, I'm sorry.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, you've said you see bits of yourself in most of your characters. What aspects of your personality, life experience, or fears are most present in your protagonists, and which are most present in your antagonists?
So, I mean, obviously the kids in this, the teenagers, little bits and pieces of them, reflect about when I was that age. I was 18 and out and about and stuff like that with my friends. For somebody like Beulah, it's I guess she's more extreme, but as a parent, there's always times you get frustrated with your kids where like, oh my God, like this is just a pain in the ass. The kid won't sleep. The kid won't do this. They won't do that. And you feel that frustration. And for her, obviously, she felt it to an extreme level and took things to a very extreme. It just kind of is an amplification of the feelings that I think every parent goes through. That newborn, a colicky newborn, or even my kids are older now and they're still pains in the ass sometimes. So I think that I feel for her in some of her feelings with how she reacts to Hattie. Obviously, it's at an extreme level. And for me, like antagonist wise, I guess we'll call the monster the main antagonist. He's kind of, I'm not going to say a tragic character because, as we know, he wasn't the best of people. But that kind of the vengeance portion of it, where most of the people that he takes out are not good people. So you get that kind of like, yes, this is redemption and justice served upon some of these evildoers.
Well, what is a craft challenge you're still wrestling with, a skill you're actively working to develop in your storytelling? And is it something maybe that came up during your writing retreat? Maybe that you got help from other people?
Yeah, so characterization, obviously people do give me credit for some of the characters I built, but earlier in my career, I feel like I wish I could go back and rewrite some of the books because I feel like exploring the backstory and characters and giving them a reason as to why they're doing something as opposed to them just doing it is very important. And that's why I feel like Beulah was one of my favorite characters, because I got to really explore why she did it, and it felt justified to me, at least, why she was doing what she's doing. So for me, working on building greater backstories without boring the reader, without info dumping, because we've all read those, info dump books where you get, 2 or 3 pages of just nonsense, especially in fantasy. I mean, they'll give you a magic system, a world, a religion, and a government within 10 pages. And I have no idea what's going on. So building characterization is huge for me. And if a character is doing something, I want to know why they're doing it. And not only why they're doing it, but does it fit their character arc, and is it justified? So definitely building characters is something I'm working strongly on.
Nice. Well, speaking of working, how do you see your work contributing to or differentiating itself from the current wave of splatterpunk and extreme horror?
I'd like to think I'm contributing to it. It's very humbling, the reception that I've had in this community, not only from my peers, but from the great staff come before me that are still churning stuff out, or some that even have retired, like, Edward Lee just recently retired. I like to think I'm contributing to it, and I like to, I get blurb requests from people, and that's, I can't do them all, and I do some when I can, but it's very humbling to receive them and to have people think so highly of me and my work that they want my name on their book, to help promote it, or to just know that I read it. I always tell Aaron, we talk about this now because I still feel like we're both in our infancy, even though we've churned out quite a bit of content over the years. But I always like to think about, like, how will we be remembered in 20 years? If we're still above the dirt, will our books be hailed as this, the newer wave of splatterpunk? Will they be, like the Big Head and Ghoul and, these other books that, we climbed upon to get to where we are? Will, like Talia and Playground, to be those new pinnacles for the wave of writers in 20 years from now? So I like to think I'm contributing, and I do what I can to try to support the community, even though sometimes it's a fucking dumpster fire. But
last time I had you on, you used those same words. You were talking about something that was going on Facebook, a dumpster fire on Facebook about something.
Yeah, it's a couple of months later and nothing's changed, really. So it's just a new fire.
New fire, new dumpster.
Yep.
Let's see. You brought up Edward Lee. I'm curious. Edward Lee. Maybe I should put author. I might get 90 different Edward Lees.
Yeah, it's a common name.
Let's see here. I'm just curious to know, you said he retired. How many books he wrote?
Oh, God. Probably 60 if I had to guess.
Actually, a comprehensive listing on FictionDB cites as many as 86 published works.
Yeah.
Do you think that's accurate?
Yeah, I believe so, because he's not only written solo pieces, but he's done a lot of collaborations, and they're probably counting, maybe anthologies as well. So he's been writing since the 80s. So he's been around for a while. I mean, he's well into his 60s now, and he's put out some of the like classic splatterpunk books out there, extreme horror. Like you can't be an extreme horror fan if you haven't at least read one book by Edward Lee.
Yeah. Yeah, Judith Sonnet recommended The Big Head. It's like, holy shit. Yeah. She's like, it'll change your life. Maybe not for the better.
That, and I actually think that even more extreme than The Big Head, which I love The Big Head. It's great. It's fucking violent. But Haunter of the Threshold is probably just as graphic, if not more, than The Big Head. And it's criminally underrated because The Big Head gets a lot of love, rightfully so, but Haunter of the Threshold is... He loves H.P. Lovecraft, and he did a lot of H.P. Lovecraft inspired books, and Haunter of the Threshold is one of them. And that book, I read it, I was like, holy shit. I was like, why are more people not talking about this? Like, this book is fucking fucked up.
Just a total sleeper, huh?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm going to have to check that out.
Yeah. Yeah, it's up there.
Mm. Well, all right, Mr. Lee, you are good to retire, sir. You've done plenty.
Yes, he definitely has.
Well, speaking of your body of work as a whole, is there any recurring question, fear, or idea that you find yourself returning to, perhaps unconsciously? And why do you think that theme persists for you?
I love vengeance, and I think one of the main reasons why I love vengeance so much is because you can make all of the quote unquote victims as deplorable as you want because you know that they're going to die in the end. So it's something I have to almost break myself from doing because not everybody wants, one author just to write a ton of vengeance stories, but vengeance is a theme that I love it. It's fun because I know I can go as crazy as I want, and writing Talia and Talia 2, vengeance is the main theme in those books, and the characters I have in those books are absolute pieces of shit, but I know that they're going to get killed. I know they're going to die horribly, and the reader usually knows going in, if they know Talia from any of my other works, they know that they're going to get it one way or the other. So it's vengeance is something I really gravitate towards.
Gotcha. And I'm looking at your book here. Publication date was August 29th of this year?
Yep.
Okay. So what are we at? September 14th. Not very long. Have you gotten any memorable feedback or reactions, positive or negative?
Yeah, so far, knock on wood, everything's been pretty positive. I just had Laura Candy, it's her name. She goes by a couple different names. She just posted a really cool video on TikTok. She had a pig mask and stuff, and did a really cool book review. And it's, for the most part, it's been very positive. The audiobook is actually finished and is waiting for the final files to be approved. And so far, it's been very, very well received. It is a longer book, so I know it takes people a little bit longer to get through it, but the reviews that have come in have been nothing but positive. And, obviously I like that because I want to hear the positivity, but it also reaffirms and reassures me that I'm getting better as a writer, because I don't want to revert back to anything. I want to keep growing and make my writing stronger so I can put out a better product for the reader.
Yeah. Yeah. And speaking of TikTok, I feel like the person said page 275, although I read the book digital, so I don't know if you're reading it in a Kindle, if it alters the content that's on the actual page.
Yeah.
but I'm pretty sure she was saying 275 was just like Aaron's playground page that went viral. Do you know? Have you seen that TikTok?
Yep. Yeah, it's 275 in the paperback, because I looked at the hardcover and I'm like, what is she talking about? And I'm like, oh, wait a minute, it's probably the paperback. So I checked the paperback copy and I'm like, oh yeah, okay. It's I'm not gonna ruin it, but it's a scene with Shep out in the out with the pigs. He goes out by himself.
Okay, I got you.
Yeah,
I got you.
Yeah. Which I actually toned down quite a bit because I didn't want to get in trouble with Amazon. So I actually toned that scene down more than it was.
Yeah, that was like I said, I'm not going to say anything to ruin it either, but yeah.
It's unsavory.
Unsavory. Well, Daniel, it has been a pleasure talking with you.
Absolutely. Thank you again for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. So as we bring the show to a close, is there anything you'd like to plug or let your readers know about?
Let's check my phone real quick. So I do have some events coming up most of my stuff is mainly on the East Coast and probably pretty much around me this time of the year. I have a book signing in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania at Barnes & Noble on October 25th. So I'll be there with a bunch of other authors as well. And the Goulastic Book Fair in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, which is kind of modeled after the old school Scholastic book fairs, where you just kind of, all the authors set up books on a table and then we disappear into another room. And it gives the readers an opportunity to kind of peruse and not have creepy authors staring at them. That's November 9th in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. But for anybody that wants to follow me, social media, I'm pretty much on all the big platforms. I have a Substack, which is my somewhat monthly newsletter that I put out, which you get all the updates, events that are coming up, cover reveals, book sales, stuff like that. And that's really much. Facebook's the best because, like I said, I am almost 40, so I'm kind of old, and I do stick to Facebook more because it's what I grew up with.
Do a TikTok dance, Daniel.
Yeah, I'm not Aaron. I'm not TikTok dancing, even though he's older than me.
Yeah, I wish. I see Aaron and Triana. I was like, I wish I had the inclination to market like that. I'm just too damn lazy.
Yeah, they're good at it, and I just don't have the time. They're good at editing it, and Aaron's very good at it. But maybe if I can write full time in the next 5 years or so, maybe then I'll start TikTok dancing. But for right now, I don't have time for that.
All right. Sounds good. Well, listeners at home, all links are in the description. And Daniel, thank you again for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
And thank you to everyone who tuned in. If you enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Be sure to tune in next Tuesday for a new episode featuring the best and brightest authors and filmmakers of dark literature and film. So until then, stay healthy, stay sane, and as always, thank you for listening. See you next time.